Hi, boys and girls. Today we're going to start off with the game, and then we're going to explain some stuff, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to try to keep the ball in the air. Now, we're doing it this way, so it should be pretty easy, right? Let's try it, all right? See, that's not hard, now is it? Today we're going to be talking about a lady who was told at a very old age that she's going to have a baby. That was upside down for her. She didn't think it was possible. She thought it was crazy talk, and she laughed because she thought, "There's no way I'm having a baby. I'm really old." But she did have a baby, and God gave her the last laugh. She actually laughed in joy. So today we're going to try something different. We are going to try to do this like we just did, but upside down and with our feet. Kids, try this at home. All right, so let's move our chairs. All right, and we're going to be like this, and your head up here, or wherever you want it. Just keep it on your shoulders.
Yeah.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh.
Nope. All right, you try. Let me see. Yes! All right. So that game wasn't as easy, but still we had fun doing it. And that's the way it was with Sarah. Sarah laughed and laughed because she thought there's no way in the world I'm going to have a baby. I'm too old. It's impossible. Nobody's ever done it before at that age. But God made her laugh even more because she did have a baby, and that was God's promise, and God blessed her. And that's to remind you that when you go through a time that's tough or you may not understand, remember that God can give you the last laugh. Never give up. All right? Thank you, boys and girls. Try this at home. Bye.
Today we learned that God brings us laughter. So we're going to try today not to laugh. And then the second time, we're going to try to make somebody laugh. You know, God's laughter, it brings joy to him. Did you know that? Mm-hmm. Okay. What is it like trying not to laugh? Is it hard? It's hard. Now, is it fun making people laugh? Life wouldn't be very fun if we didn't laugh or felt joy. God is with us when things are even bad in our lives. So let's try to make somebody smile and laugh today.
Today we're going to learn that God brings us laughter. Do you enjoy laughter? I have to tell you, I love to laugh. I love things that are funny. I enjoy watching funny dog videos or hearing jokes. I love to laugh. Laughter is great. The Bible even tells us that laughter is the best medicine. So I want you to take a second and I want you to try to think of the funniest joke or the funniest thing you can think of. Something that maybe you've seen or heard. Just think about it for a second. How did that make you feel? Did it make you want to laugh all over again because it was hilarious? Well, I have a joke for you this morning. Why did the crab not like to share with his friends? Because he was shellfish. You get it? Shellfish. Okay, maybe not the funniest joke ever, but maybe it made you giggle a little bit. You know, God does bring us laughter. Today we're going to look at a woman named Sarah, and we're going to see what God did to bring some laughter and joy into her life. So let's take a look at the story of Sarah.
So part of God's story is about a promise God made to Abraham, and it begins like this. Once there was a guy named Abraham. He had a wife, Sarah. They didn't think they could have any kids, which was a major disappointment because they really wanted a family. But little did Abraham know that God had a very special plan for him. When Abraham was 75 years old, God promised to give him kids, and one day God would send the rescuer through his family. All God asked was that Abraham and Sarah leave their home first and follow him. Now, they had a tough choice to make: leave all their friends and trust God, or stay comfortable. This was not easy. See, Abraham really wanted kids, but was already pretty old. Sarah was getting up there too. Not to mention, she had never been able to get pregnant. So if Abraham and Sarah were going to leave their home and trust in God's promise, they had to believe that God would do something that seemed impossible. The good news is, they decided to trust that God would keep his promise. That's always the right choice. So Abraham and Sarah moved from their home to a land called Canaan. Right away, God reminded Abraham of his promise. He said, "I will make your children like the dust of the earth." Can specks of dust be counted? If they can, then your children can be counted. This was God's funny way of telling Abraham he would have a lot of kids, because nobody can count every piece of dust. Well, this promise seemed great, but after a while, Abraham and Sarah still had no kids, let alone as many as the pieces of dust. Now, they were really old. Sometimes God doesn't remind us of his promises because he wants us to learn to trust him. But God took Abraham outside at night and told him to look at the stars. He reminded Abraham that he would give him that many kids. So Abraham decided to keep believing God. He and Sarah waited again. After more years, he got impatient. This time, God told Abraham, by next year, Sarah will have a son. But by now, Abraham was 99 years old. He and Sarah had both given up on having kids and God's promise. In fact, when Abraham told Sarah what God said, she laughed. It's probably not a good idea to laugh at God's promises, but Sarah was tired of waiting and had stopped trusting. The great thing is, even if we think it's impossible, God really does keep his promises. And just like God promised, Sarah got pregnant the next year after Abraham's 100th birthday. When her son was born, she named him Isaac, which means laughter. Sarah said, "God has given laughter to me. Everybody who hears about this will laugh with me." And think about it. A really old lady having a baby is pretty funny. God kept his promise to give Abraham and Sarah a son. Even though they didn't think it was possible, it was easy for God because he can do anything, including giving old people babies. And remember how God was going to give Abraham as many children as the stars in the sky? Well, Isaac grew up and had children who had more children who had more children. This kept going and going and going. And guess who eventually was born in Abraham's line? The rescuer himself, God's son, Jesus. All because Abraham followed God and trusted God to keep his promise. And that's the story of God's promise to Abraham. So in case you missed it, here's the quick version. Abraham and Sarah were old. God promised to give Abraham kids. Abraham and Sarah waited. They got impatient. God reminded them he keeps his promises. Abraham and Sarah waited more. They got impatient again. God told them Sarah would have a baby. Sarah laughed. She had a baby. Jesus was eventually born into their family. God always keeps his promises. And that's a part of God's story.
You know, it is a good thing that God brings us laughter because sometimes life is pretty hard and pretty sad. So it's a good thing that we have laughter occasionally. But you know, sad feelings aren't wrong. They have a purpose. But God does love seeing us full of joy in our lives. That's why he sent Jesus, his son. That's why Jesus came, for us to make a way to live with God and be with him forever. What greater joy is there or happiness than that? And because of Jesus, we have the hope of heaven, a place with no more sorrow, no more tears, no more sadness, because of what Jesus did by paying for our sins on the cross. So because of Jesus, God brings us laughter and joy that we can't even explain. But it all comes from God because of his love. And Jesus has given us joy both here in this life and forever in heaven.
Just to find out, better.